Hunting for Answers is a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. Welcome to Hunting for Answers, a true crime podcast. I'm your host, Hunter. Most homicide cases begin with a victim. Then comes the search for answers. This case followed a different path. Investigators identified the person responsible, but one question remained. Who was the victim? For decades, a young woman sat at the center of a solved murder case. Investigators knew who killed her, but they did not know who she was. This is the story of Tiffany Bradley. Tiffany Bradley was 16 years old. She was from Allentown, Pennsylvania, and grew up with 3 older brothers. Relatives would later remember her as athletic, creative, and full of energy. She enjoyed dancing, drawing, playing basketball, and participating in ROTC. One family member described her as tiny but mighty, and remembered her radiant smile. At 16, there was still so much life ahead of her. But in November of 2000, the people who knew Tiffany found themselves facing questions they never expected to ask. On November 8th, 2000, Tiffany was reported missing. At first, the questions were the kind that often come with a disappearance. Where was she? Who had she last been with? When would she be heard from again? Her family was looking for answers, but there were very few to find. Years later, investigators would determine that Tiffany had been in the Boston area. Authorities would later say she had been trafficked to Boston. But in November of 2000, none of that was known. Tiffany was 16 years old, and no one seemed to know where she was. On November 13th, 2000, a disturbing discovery was made at the Soldiers' Home in Chelsea, Massachusetts. Human remains had been found in a parking lot. The victim was a young female. Investigators said the remains had been severely mutilated. Authorities would later report that the victim had been decapitated and dismembered. The condition of the remains made identification extremely difficult. Investigators opened a homicide case, but almost immediately, they encountered a different problem. They did not know who the victim was. Somewhere else, a family was already looking for a missing 16-year-old girl. But at the time, those stories had not yet been connected. No identification, no immediate match to a missing person. And so, until her identity could be learned, she was given a name: Chelsea Jane Doe. Even without a name, investigators continued moving forward. They followed leads, conducted interviews, and worked to understand what had happened. Eventually, the investigation led them to a man named Eugene McCollum. Investigators believed he could help explain what had happened to the young woman. As they worked to piece together her final days, one detail continued to surface: a name, Lisa. Authorities said McCollum told them that was the name he knew her by. He also claimed she had told him she was from Philadelphia. It wasn't an identification, but it was a start. Investigators eventually identified the person responsible, But they still did not know the name of the victim. In 2005, Eugene McCollum pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. He received a life sentence. The homicide case had been resolved, but Chelsea Jane Doe remained unidentified. Who was Chelsea Jane Doe? The years continued to pass, then a decade, then two. Investigators refused to let the case fade away. They released facial reconstructions, shared images with the public, followed up on tips, and revisited the evidence again and again and again. All while the young woman remained known as Chelsea Jane Doe. For 25 years, that was how the public knew her. The breakthrough would come from DNA. Years later, investigators returned to the case with assistance from the FBI. Using investigative genetic genealogy, authorities began building a family tree. The search eventually led to a man living in Texas. DNA testing confirmed that he was the victim's biological brother. Finally, investigators had the answer. Chelsea Jane Doe was Tiffany Bradley. On June 3, 2026, officials announced the breakthrough publicly. The young woman, known as Chelsea Jane Doe, was identified. At the announcement, family members shared memories of the girl they knew. Massachusetts State Police Colonel Jeffrey Noble noted that investigators knew the name of the killer long before they knew the name of the victim. And at last, they did. Tiffany Bradley. Our thoughts are with Tiffany Bradley's family and loved ones. Sharing her story helps return focus to the person at the center of this case. For more cases and updates, follow Hunting for Answers. You can also connect with us through our Facebook group and find us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And as always, if there's a story you believe deserves attention, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us for another episode. Until next time. Hunting for Answers is a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network. For more podcasts from the Black Effect Podcast Network, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.